Hey everybody, Eric Hayden here in the garden today. We had Tropical Storm Arthur just passed to our east here in eastern North Carolina. We're about 3 miles from the ocean itself. Didn't have much of a breeze, about 20-25 miles per hour, but we certainly had a lot of rain. The rain gauge now is empty, but you should have seen this thing this morning. We had 4.39 inches of rain here in the eastern part of the state. So roses certainly got a good watering. I'm not going to have to water for a while. The point of this video is to show you kind of some of the blooms in our garden now. That's Marilyn Monroe. If you hang tight, we're going to talk about what we're doing with that compost pile over there. First things first, we'll take a look at the roses. Looking pretty good. It's Baby's Blush. Again, as far as rainfall goes, we needed it. It had been almost 2 full straight weeks since we had rainfall in the garden. So started to had to do some drip irrigation and hand watering. This is Zach Noble's. This is again Sport of Let Freedom Ring. Most of the garden, like the Geminis and certainly Double Delight, starting to get past peak. But that's what is neat. If you plant a lot of different varieties of roses, you're going to get a spread of blooms. So my first bloom started roughly the last probably about 10 days of April. Double Delight, Yolande de Aragon, Dublin Bay, a climber. So some lightly petaled roses. And what I mean by that is roses that didn't have as many petals. Then the Let Freedom Rings, which you're looking at now, they were much, much later. You can still see quite a few blooms and buds on them. So with a huge variety, you're going to have a much longer bloom period. So things like Affirm, which are pretty much on their way out. You can see I need to go ahead and deadhead that. That finished up the last week of April, first week of May, and now they're being replaced by other roses. So that's one neat thing. If you have a lot of different varieties, you can see Marlin's Day just about past peak. Most of these rose blooms are old, but there's still some fresh ones on there. If you have these varieties, you're going to have different sets of blooms that peak at different times. A good example of that is Hot Princess. About a week ago, this was mainly buds. And you can see there are some blooms that are getting a little weathered. Again, we did have 4 inches of rain last night into this morning, but you can still see plenty of good cut flowers. And again, we had 20-25 mile per hour winds and over 4 inches of rain. You can see some of the water damage, but you can't beat that in terms of not covering a rose and having a tropical storm move through. Hot Princess, again, if you haven't seen some of our other videos, it's a florist rose, very, very nice foliage, very long stems, but the best quality, other than that hot pink color, that's amazing, is it holds its form very long. So you see how that has a tight center spiral to it. It will hold like that for many, many days, whether it's on the bush itself or as a cut flower. And that's really nice because some other roses open up so quick you don't get to enjoy them as long. Gemini is just about past peak, but you can still see some very nice blooms in the garden. I haven't deadheaded some of them, so got a lot of petals in the garden, especially from Brandy Scott. So that's a little update on the garden. Things are looking pretty good. The point of the video again is to mention if you plant a nice variety of roses, your blooms are going to be spread out over a good 2 to 4 week period. Next thing we're going to be doing in the garden is doing our second round of fertilization. After the blooms have passed, you want to put some organics down and get ready for the next bloom cycle, which is roughly 5 to 7 weeks after the first one. So that's what we're going to be doing here next couple days. It's kind of a rainy pattern, so pretty good weather for that in terms of putting down fertilizer. The other thing I'm trying to do is grow grass. Centipede grass here in eastern North Carolina is one of the more popular ones. And unfortunately, the compost facility that I usually use has been out of compost for about a week and a half now. So I've had to resort to the big box store and buying some topsoil. And nothing wrong with that. It tends to be more sifted than the municipal compost. But for a 40 or 50 pound bag, it's $2.50. I can get over 500 pounds of compost at the municipal facility for $5 to $7. So it's certainly a cost thing. I wanted to show you, I dug in my compost pile. I don't turn it like you should. I don't keep it wet. I just throw anything that's non-rose debris. So any other type of vegetation, whether it's grass clippings, weeds, stuff like that, I throw in the compost pile. And I dug down here it has broken down nicely. So I want to show you what I'm getting, and they probably all hit on me, but I had a bunch of worms in here at one point. I'll see if I can scour a few out. But you can see it's a very, very dark material. There's a worm there. And we don't have a lot of worms in eastern North Carolina. Our soil is pretty much 100% sand. So when I dig in the garden prior to me putting down organics and compost, I just didn't have a lot of worms. But you can see I've got them there in the homemade compost. So if you haven't started a compost pile yet, I encourage you to do so. I know some folks are fancy with them and make them look really nice, and that's fine, but you don't even have to do that. If you just pile up your yard waste, add some kitchen scraps now and then, and again, I mean vegetation, leaves, lettuce, that type of thing. We're not talking about any food scraps per se. You can make quite a bit of compost over a short period of time. And again, I'm showing you these worms because we just don't have these in our sandy soil. This is all through the compost, adding organic matter. What few we probably had are certainly multiplying in this nice environment. I'm going to take this compost, and this is what I'm going to use to cover my centipede seed. It's not as sifted as what you get out of the bag. You can see some big particles in there. However, it is much, much more pure and has some good nutrients in it, but also it has humus, so that's going to improve the holding capacity of the soil to hold water. A lot of microbes and organisms in there that will get the seed hopefully off to a healthy start. Because I don't know if you've paid too much attention, but I can certainly grow roses. I put a lot of effort into them. Again, I'm kind of mesmerized by this Marilyn Monroe. It looks great. Now I'm focusing my attention on the yard, because I don't know if you've seen some of my videos, but I've got plenty of sandy areas where we don't have any seeds. So I'm going to try to fill these spots in. And this is what we were growing on for the roses, just 100% sand. So I'm trying to add some organic matter and get some centipede grass growing. There's some centipede now. And hopefully the rest of this yard, where all those bare spots are now, will gradually fill in here with time. Centipede takes about a month to germinate, so that's going to be quite the challenge coming up. So that's it in the garden. Again, we gave you a recap of what's going on. Zach Noble's Let Freedom Ring, and of course Hot Princess, some of the better looking roses here over the past 7 days. And this is with the over 4 inches of rain that we had yesterday with Tropical Storm Arthur. I should say yesterday into the day today. Last bloom I'll leave you with is Crescendo. It's a nice newer hybrid tea. It does have some fragrance and always excellent form. Parentage, I forget both parents, but one is Gemini, so you might recognize the foliage and the color. Hope everybody's staying healthy and doing well. We'll be in touch, and thanks as always for watching.